We were going to call for a rebuttal, but it came to my attention that some questions were asked by the board of Karen Freeman of King County last night, and before we begin rebuttal, it's appropriate we get Ms. Springin's response to the board.
Yeah. Again, for the record, Karen Freeman. I work at the King County Executive's Office, located 409 Fifth Avenue in Seattle. Mr. McCree asks for visit services that Seattle provide that King County doesn't. And I entered into the record and I did it, which the top of this say local services. And really the issue is that Seattle provide local services at urban metals, and she had to provide local services at really what the equivalent is of rural type levels. We'll be able to, as more time I bet I could find a lot more examples, but not a lot of examples where King County doesn't provide the service at all. But there's a drastic difference between the levels of service, which I think if you take a peek at its sheet gager, and I sort of listed a lot of the main services, just goes through my own. It's quite striking that their aspirin level is service. Also, just wanted to Danning came up a couple times that there is a proposal that the city of Seattle and King County are working on. The issue is being able to fund it, but it's something that we're actively talking about. And I was remiss in not mentioning that the county did provide Fire District 2 with an option to solve fire services in 2009, and that is to site a fire station on the corner of Puget Sound Park, which was one of the parcels that we transferred Fear in their annexation. And we were actively negotiating with the fire district on that proposal with the 5-acre park, but the fire district dropped out of the negotiations with the city of Uring objected to that option. And very remiss, it forgot to mention it. That's sorry for that. Is it? Was it?
Mr. Simmons?
Can I ask you a question? With regards to level of service or fire protection, does King County establish a level of service for fire protection? Is that run district by district? Yeah, it's a cooked with separate service of district.
Karen, could you repeat the GCE business now? Not having fund me yet for a plan for Japan's. What kinds of things would that joint planning entail?
It would involve, I think the vision that the Canadian task for is a sensitive community concept or being community saying, what is it that you would like to see in your community and how might need those needs, be it needs us the residents or business districts, and engaging in a joint planning process with the city, so I keep county to meet those needs.
So in your, is your thoughts, they're right on time with that plan?
I think the proposal would be to, I think when the figure measurement to conduct that understanding in 2017, the issue, and I think it highlighted about the service levels, we had one FTE that does this kind of work for all of
full-time employee.
Right. One, excuse me, I'm sorry. Thank you. One full-time employee that does this kind of work for all of King County, whereas, the city of Seattle, I think, has or 40 staff members or something that does. So we're wanting to contribute to that effort in a substantive way that our one employee is pretty booked out. And so we're trying to figure out how we might contribute dollars or otherwise to be an equal partner in that process. We've got a $50 million budget shortfall we're staring at. So we're trying to figure out how we might meet this meet.
Mr. Hamlin, what a question. And in regard, you talked about the MOU, Philippa yesterday, and you said that the parcel that was on there that was talked about. And why was it the conversation continued after? I see the expiration date. I was wondering why King County didn't continue discussions. knowing that this was the process is still in place.
Yeah, the whole purpose of putting that option on the table was to incentivize both jurisdictions to move forward quickly, with never meant to replace the district's need to engage in future planning. It was simply meant to move the process forward. Oh, we see that there's this need. Let's try to solve it so that we can incentivize all the parties to keep moving forward quickly. When the MOE expired in 2012, Missouri's annexation attempt failed almost at the same time. The parties kind of disbanded, and he could really know what's going to happen next. And then the city of Tukwila moved forward with the attempt to ask the triangle. And if folks remember, that took, I think, 2 years of all of our time working on that issue. So,
Yeah.
Just reiterate what the offer was that was made on that land in 2009. Just exactly how the chain events occurred, and what how it's turned out, and what parties.
yeah, we're trying to be creative and find solutions. And my leadership head was thinking about this the Bioneer Park that was owned by T County. There were 6 parking area S that was about to be transferred to the city of Gary because of their annexation. This Puget Sound Park is located in the southern portion of that annexation area, but really in the northern portion of what would have been Murion at the time. And it's a flat part. And it would have been a good option if folks were interested in it to place a fire station on the corner of it and leave the rest of it as a park. So we were talking with the fire district about that. The leadership at the time, the city of Beering, was not excited about that proposal. They objected. They wanted to receive the parcel to keep it as a park. And so the fire district got down in negotiation.
Respect. Any other questions for Scoop? Thank you.
Now we move to rebuttal, which is Haney, and I don't know if you have a no for anything.
Yes, sir. Thank you again. My name is James E. and I represent the city of Seattle and the Seas. What tonight is in fitting again, Chief Carol Scoggins of the Seattle Fire Department. But it's business my chief face. Sorry. Bubble. Yes. Thank you. Is that bad? Before I begin our rebuttal, I did want to answer a couple of questions that the board raised last night, so I'm hoping this isn't kicking out of my time since I am answering questions that you asked me and I didn't have complete answers for last night. First, I think board member Little asked if the election on assumption was just in the portion to be assumed in a utility district or in the utility district as a whole. And the answer is it is just in the portion that is to be assumed. But again, assumption is not on the table tonight, but I did want to make sure I answered that question. Second, someone asked, it might have been board member Evans, I apologize, but about whether the tax monies that are collected in the front of the sales tax incentive, whether those are used solely in the annexation area or whether they go into the general fund. The answer is very clear in the statute. It says, quote, all revenue collected under this section may be used solely to provide, maintain, and operate municipal services in the annexation area. So correct, that's sales tax. Yes, the sales tax incentive. That wasn't my question, but I'm glad to know. Okay. I think someone asked me that, and I'm not sure which of you did. I thought it might have been me, because I know you asked me about the utilities in that way. Finally, there was a question that was asked about the reciprocal agreement between the Seattle Public Library and the Key County Library System, or whether it was still in effect. And I would just direct you to paragraph 7 in the agreement, which I submitted as an exhibit. It does say that the agreement remains in effect till such time as one or both parties terminated. And there's been no termination as far as I know in, I believe, the library system representative do a search, and I confirmed that the agreement for reciprocal library services remains in effect. So those were the three questions I think I heard from the board. And now I'll begin. I would like to begin the battle by on fire issues by having Chief Scoggins come forward and talk to you a little bit about the Seattle fire.
Good evening. My name is Charles Dobbin, our Chief Seattle Fire Department. I'd like to address the one question that was asked on who sets the level of fire protection. I think you just asked a couple of minutes ago. It is the local community's responsibility to set the level of fire protection on response time, staffing, and all of those different things. It's very important to know that National Fire Protection Association sets the recommended standards in all the ways that we do business in the fire department, and it's up to the communities to either adopt or voluntarily adhere to those standards. So in the Seattle Fire Department, the community has set a number of different standards for us that we voluntarily work to achieve. And that ties in everything from training standards to search and qualifications for different positions, whether it's technical rescue teams or fire prevention or inspections and the daily round of training. It was also mentioned earlier about the Washington Survey Ratings Board, and that's very similar to the national organization, the insurance service offices. And they set two insurance rates, and it's important to note that. The insurance rates they set are for residential insurance rates and commercial insurance rates. And it's based on the community's classification on how those rates are set. So the insurance organizations, they'll dive into the WSRB rating, they'll look and they'll see Seattle class 2. So Seattle, the closer you get to 1, the better the community rates are. The further you are away from 1, the higher the rates are based on their formulas and calculations. And it's important to note those things. Now, I came here tonight for a couple of reviews. I wanted you to know that if this annexation does take place, that our goal in the Seattle Fire Department is to provide the annex area the same level of service that all the other citizens of Seattle receive today. And I know last night there was conversations regarding the ALS system and paramedic resources and different things like that. And it's like it was mentioned earlier, Seattle, it is one of the birthplaces of ALS. So it's very important to us that all the citizens that we serve, that community members that we serve, receive that highest level of service. It's also important to note that many of the innovations that take place nationally are birthed right here in Seattle. So having access to that level of care to citizens is very important. Now, what does it look like tomorrow if the annexation does take place? Well, my commitment to you is our goal is to try to get ALS resources on sea within 8 minutes. How do we do it today in the city of Seattle? You may have that question. In 2015, we did pretty good, but we didn't get to 90% because the 90 percentile number is very important. That's 90 times out of 100. You're going to need that standard. In 2015, we were 89%. So 89 times out of 100, we did pretty good. In 2014, 87 times out of 100, we did pretty good. So what we would do is we would, look at the system as a whole and place our resources in the places they need to be to continue to achieve these efforts. And this is that ALS carrier. This is the IV solutions that take place, the innovations, but all of our BLS rigs carry defibrillation and are very skilled EMTs. So you're going to have that first line of service where we fully expect our EMTs to get on scene in short order. I know it was also a part of the discussion on what happens to the current area that this district serves in North Fury. And that's an important question. And automatically came up in the discussion. And what you need to know is the difference between automatic gate and contractual obligations. Now, automatic gate, in my opinion, is assisting that reciprocal services take place. So you give me one, I give you one, and there's that reciprocity there, and it's somewhat balanced. What I had read in the information is this particular station runs a lot of calls in North Fury, and approximately 2,500 calls they run annually, and about 700 to 800 of those calls are in North Fury. And based on the information that I receive. And so that's a pretty significant number. So if we were not receiving that back, that's where we need to get into that contractual discussion. If we were receiving that back, then we have the open conversations of automatic aid. One of the things that I've done as CL Fire Chief is I have engaged all of the King County Fire Chiefs in working to establish an automatic aid agreement for King County based on the principles that I just talked about. You give me one, I give you one. And so we can balance that out and better serve all citizens here in King County. So it's very important to know now there's a lot of things to be worked out here, but we have a lot of standards that we worked at here to the city of Seattle today. None of that would change if this annexation takes place. We would look at the resources available. We would see what services we could provide, and if we could provide similar resources that we provide all over the rest of the city, it'd be my obligation to inform you as well as the city council and mayor, and we can't meet those thresholds. But one of the things I would also need to look at is what is the actual level of service today? I would need to look at what are the 90 percentile bars, so travel times, response times, BLS on scene time, ALS on scene time today, so you don't have an unrealistic expectation in what you're getting today versus what you expect you receive in the future. So I like to look at apples to apples and to be able to tell you, what you would expect to receive from the Seattle Fire Department. That's very important for me to be very open and transparent to you and what we can provide. So that's a few comments on what I can make there. Do you have any questions, Bo?
Is that a question? With the service in other parts of you abut several other agencies, don't recall north to the east and all that stuff. Question of the east, but anyway, do you have other arrangements there already, or that you're working with, where it's more an equal sharing of assets?
We have other arrangements, but none of them are formal. So that's our goal, is to create in writing those expectations of formal arrangements. North Shoreline to the north, Mercer Island to the east. But we also have the SEEK's National Mutual Aid Plan that comes into play. Also, every time that there's a large scale emergency, you can call for resources when your agency runs out of resources. Along the benefits, if this annexation would take place, the amount of resources that you have available for a structural fire, a vehicle accident, a commercial fire. Today we had 33 fire stations and all the technical teams and all the other things that go along with that. And that full wave of resources would come to solve problems. And, how do we solve that today when yesterday we had a fire in the University District that some of you may have seen on the 211 difficult fire that our units were rooting out. We had to solve that problem. But what we do is we move units all around the city to make sure we maintain coverage all around the city. So if there was a fire in the south, we would bring resources down to this end, but we would move the balance of the resources around to make sure we had coverage in the city. And that's the way it works right now. We have a very dynamic system that works really well in serving the citizens of Seattle. We would bring that same mindset into this process also.
Mr. Pohez? Yeah.
Okay. Tighten the cables here. No, it's okay. Keep up.
All right.
Chief, is there where, there was quite a bit of discussion about ALS services last night, and different from King County, Seattle retains all of the EMS property tax load. Now, in the material submitted by the city, it just shows a total of property tax. Would you happen to know what the breakout is for the EMS portion of the annexation area?
I think it's in some of the materials, and I want to say I read something around 400,000, somewhere around in that number. Okay, I bet you'll be wrong, but you were right. I think I read that.
That all right? Yes. Okay. Thank you.
What's good, so
Thank you. Thank you too for pointing it out. I for whatever reason, I'm kind of stuck on this ALS issue, and I think it's because we heard testimony that right now the closest ALS provision that Seattle would be able to provide is upon spending 15 minutes to annexation area. And I think I heard you say that currently the city of Seattle's level of service for ALS is 90% at 8 minutes. And you just now testified that it would be your job to tell us whether you would be able to beat that level of service. But I think this board needs to know before making a decision whether you could guarantee that that level of service would be provided, and maybe not necessarily knowing exactly how you're going to provide that, but at least to assure us that you have some options that you could articulate for us that gives us some insurance that you will actually be able to guarantee us.
Well, and that's one of the things that we would be just spend a little more time digging into the resources. And just so you know, to put an ALS resource in service, it's approximately $1.4 million. Put an ALS resource in service, about 2.5 to put an engine in service, or a 4-person unit in service. So it's important that I'm able to access all of the resources that are available. When I say resource, the dollars and cents. So if there's contracts in place right now, I need to look at those. The EMS levy and all the other tax revenues that come in, we need to actually start to dig in and understand it. And that's important. What you heard on that response side is based on our Medicare being at Fire Station 32, where it is today. Okay, that is the model that was created. But that's one of the things we would have to openly discuss. If we're adding almost 18,000 new citizen residents to the community with the response area that's going to provide probably 2,500 calls annually. If we take the whole area today, which is the North Burien area and the North Highline, then that's going to say one thing. But if we stop at that line, that's about 1,800 responses annually, and a number of those are EMS type responses. So we have to look at all of those things and actually pencil out what it is we're looking at, what resources we want to focus on, and then I can come back to you with that once I have a clearer understanding of that.
Ms. Ennis?
No, Chief, I'm not very versed in all of this, so I'm going to probably see something really stupid and I ask for indulgence on. But that sounds to me like that involves hard facilities, capital improvements, and not just operational changes, which is what we were led to believe in the presentation by EC.
Well, it depends. And I'm sorry I have to give you that answer. It depends, but that first, very good question. If the conversation is the coverage area on the existing area, that station is very well situated because it covers North Burien, so it allows a good central location to go south, to go east, to go west, to go north. So it's a very good location if the conversation is the existing coverage area. But if the existing coverage area becomes only North Highline, then that's a very different conversation. How do we get there? That's the part that we have to clear at impact.
So you will need to rely on or cooperate with Burien North to be this?
The Seattle Fire Department does not need to rely on North Burien for this annexation solely of North Highline to take place. If the conversation is the Seattle Fire Department will provide coverage for North Burien, then we have to dig into those MOUs also. When I read the MOU, it's important to note that it almost speaks to a reciprocal service of light resources coming north and going south. Well, we would need to engage in that agreement because things will obviously change when there are more resources available. So I would have to get into the weeds of that MOU and probably make some modifications to that MOU. And it gives a clause in there that there's a 6-month window for actually doing that and providing notice and different things like that. Thank you. There helps a lot, right? Thank you.
So with the time that we had for questions, I think that Do we get a time check on being out the remains for presentation of the rebuttal? Budget or husbands?
Well, I caught you. We've got another couple minutes because I paused it for the questions.
So, yeah. Chief Fury?
Yeah, credited to your signatures. The chief did tell you fire services. You talked a lot about basic fire services at DLS services. The ALS, I did provide you a couple of exhibits tonight. One is the Seattle Fire Department's 2014 Emergency Response Report. That is the color report that provides you the city's relative standards. It also tells you how the city has done in meeting those standards. And so I provided that to you this evening. I also provided you another exhibit which showed the 2015 statistics. That was basically a one-page document starting with the table on it, and that shows those statistics. So as the chief said, the city is currently meeting those standards. Roughly, the city is making the 8-minute response time in ALS 89% of the time. A standard is 90, so the city is making every effort to do that. With respect to the services to Fire District 2 and Fire District 2's request for land, you heard from Ms. Freeman tonight about King County's efforts to actually try to fulfill the terms of the agreement and to provide land at Puget Sound Park for a fire station, which Burey decided they didn't want the fire station there. I think if you look at where that Puget Sound Park is, that's centrally located right in the northern part of Burien, and it would have been an ideal location, an area that they're asking for now. But King County does not have just land lying around. They made a good faith effort to try to provide land in 2009, and that big effort was rejected. Finally, tonight, I'd just like to reiterate a couple of points that I tried to make throughout this proceeding. And the first is that Seattle is really the only jurisdiction at this point that has the financial ability to provide the urban services. And it's only because of the tax incentive that is out there now. Yet this annexation is denied, and that tax incentive goes away. Seattle has to go away as well. That just won't be enough money to serve the area, and no other jurisdiction would be able to do as well. Lastly, I would simply say that this is an opportunity for the residents of North Highline to speak as to their future and to vote on their future. What we're asking for to do is to give them the opportunity to do that. There were a lot of questions tonight about people saying, they didn't like Seattle, or they thought Seattle, there were things that Seattle could do better. But there are certainly issues that people can vote their minds on as annexation is reported. But we would ask you to give them that chance and to approve this annexation for a review by Seattle. If I could just indulge and say one last thing. With respect to the fire services, I know it's an issue. I know it's an issue that concerns you had similar issues in the Burien annexation, and there the board said did not allow that those fire issues to permit the annexation. It said, in fact, that it recognized that area would be required to work with fire districts to make sure there was fire service provided throughout the area. And it said the boundary review board strongly encourages City of Burien and North Island fire districts to move forward with establishing interlocal agreements. We certainly want to sit down with the fire districts and try to do that and try to resolve these issues if we can arrange a meeting with that. But we would ask that you please allow this annexation to go forward for a public vote. Thank you very much for your attention, and we thank all the members of the public and the community groups and the fire districts for unmerited raising their issues. Look forward here to see. I'm happy to answer your questions if you've had it for me.
Mr. Ham. Yeah, you may have answered this gets rid. I don't briefly call the answer. We talked about water and sewer districts and the fact that you're not going through assumption at this point in time. I can't remember. Can that last indefinitely? That you never
That's an assumption. Theoretically. Theoretically, the city is not obligated to assume that water services but allow them to be there forever in there.
And I think that you mentioned that practically, what's happened is over time, there has the assumption that's happening. Is that true?
It's generally the city's policy to provide water and sewer services within its boundaries. So over time, that is something that could happen here. 6 years is a time frame that it probably won't happen because it taxes cities. But
Mr. Little?
I mean, we've heard a lot of residents talk about the lack of trust and the lack in Seattle, and also the lack of noise from Seattle. Too. So, what is the plan for Seattle to engage the community, get this board proceeds with the or supposed to proceed with the annexation process, and between then and when it goes to the vote, what is Seattle's plan to kind of get community up to speed with what's going on?
well, I know that maybe Pittman can answer that a little better than I think, since that's his job. Give you that type of thing in 9 months. So let me bring him up to answer that question.
Mr. Chair, board members, my name is Kenny Fippen. I'm with the city of Seattle, 600 4th Avenue in Seattle, Washington. One of the things that what we're planning to do is that board moves forward with allowing us to proceed with an annexation. We've already had conversations with a lot of the Carver neighborhoods, and we will have an extensive engagement process using various languages to have meetings with the community throughout this process. We know that this is not going to be go fast. We are looking at probably in the neighborhood of an 8 to a 10 months process. Our goal is to sit down and meet with every resident group. We could offer at this time, even before this meeting, to sit down with group to have them be introduced. But we plan doing extensive outreach using languages of the community and also begging with leaders of the community to have those meetings.
So,
Maybe one comment I could just make it as well is that one gentleman asked, how will the city of Seattle provide these services and engage us in these types of services? And one of the things that Kenny mentioned is the Department of Neighborhoods in this community outreach that they do. If you look at the Declaration of Cappy Dialing, which we submitted into the record, it talks about the public outreach and engagement liaisons that the Department of Neighborhoods provides. And one or more would be assigned to this area to be able to talk to people and engagement and talk to them about how to get involved in the city and civic opportunities. That's what the Department of Neighborhoods is all about. And so that's one way that they would engage. I would say as well, someone asked a question about the comprehensive plan and what was going on with the comprehensive plan. That is another opportunity for engagement. The comprehensive plan, the Seattle Comprehensive Plan 2035, is currently making its way through the process. One of the things that has happened is that the environmental impact statement has been appealed on the comprehensive plan, and that is taking some time to go through that environmental impact statement appeal. And that's why we don't have the comprehensive plan today, is because we are going through that appeal. I happen to know that because I'm working on the environmental impact statement appeal. But the comprehensive plan does provide for an engagement process that gets people involved and that will be talking about the types of things that can occur in urban villages and how that community process would take place. And there is also the planning process that will take place with respect to the zoning. As the city puts in the zoning, there is that planning process. So there's going to be lots of public engagement. Well, one of the things I've learned working for Seattle is there's always a but process that we can go through, and we certainly do believe that will take.
Mr. Barnes?
Recently, Sal switched to a districts per council member, correct? So, could you, describe, generally, I realize you might can't draw a council district Kuna in the Diaz, but for the area, could you describe just generally what type of representation the citizens in that area would have under the district system?
Let Kenny speak.
Because that person has come up. After an annexation, that area is Annex District 1, which is the West Seattle area. The way the initiative is set up for the districts is that in 2020, they go back and look at the population of no district that have be larger by a big 10% than added of your own other districts. But for you can open the annexation case paper, it's in 2019 or 2020, or 2 or 3 year period, that district number 1 will be a little bit larger than all the rest of. But then in 2022, it would be a redistricting the lines of region. Let's get to this.
You heard a lot of testimony about the 2 libraries in the area and what might happen to those 2 libraries. And it looked like the email from Harry Watson suggested 2 possible approaches of being the libraries. Did they given much thought to that issue? Do you have a plan maybe for the slow burns?
We've actually been in conversation with Gary, Mr. Wazins about that. And those are two of the issues that we will definitely explore. One of the things with the library, we have to also do our library board. And so we will be having conversations in our city library area, Mr. Wazin and myself, but we had conversations on which of those 2 options that we would be looking at, or there may be even a third option out there. But those 2 options are what the original solid. See.
One of the things that is a little unique about library districts, which is different from the other types of districts to deal with, is that with library districts, when a city annexes into the library district, the territory is removed from the library district. But just like when you annex into a fire district, it's removed. But there isn't the statute that talks about what happens to the property in the library services. And so it's always a negotiation until you work out how that works. As Kenya has indicated, there have been a number of discussions between Seattle and the Myford District about another result of that. And those discussions have been very amenable, and the city believes that the issues can be resolved.
Hey dear. There's a lot of testimony about the homeless encampments on Myers Way. Could you address on the issue of what the basically Seattle's policy on the issue?
I'm afraid I really don't get
The answer to that I and know as much as I read Baker. So we're just probably say.
and me a lot less. So I do that. Certainly homelessness is an issue. It's an issue that Seattle is struggling with, that many communities are struggling with. We're trying to figure out how to do that. I know Seattle has had some experience in trying to provide RV regions for individuals in safe areas. I am not, even though I live very close to Myers Way, uh, I actually live in La Seattle, and we're very close to the area, but I pass it every day. I'm a pretty airplane fee.
I got a question over here. When do you expect the Lions share the discussions over service arrangements, whether libraries, fire, zoning sessions? I noticed your notice of intention laid out a schedule going forward through possible vote. You expect that laying out the key timeframes that the city has for if this moves ahead to a vote. Do you expect the intensity of the discussions to be prior to going to the voting public, or is it afterward?
Well, and maybe Kenya has a better handle on this than I did, but I certainly think that the city would want to engage in discussions before it goes to a vote and resolve those things in a lot of ways, because it will make the vote obviously more informed. We do have, with respect to fire district, as the lead-in schedule for 29th for this month, so you could have discussions with the fire district, and you can suit the other discussion they were at.
Yes. It is our policies that before we would put anything before a vote, that we would work out any of those kind of necessary, so it would please certain libraries or any of those other issues. We would have that all worked out before we get the forest in the vote. And you brought house of about they had considered the reservation for those people.
And candidly, right now, what's the time frame?
Tentatively, right now, we look at a 2017 the river boat. We'd be looking at a 2019 effective date, January 2019 effective date. You look at a river 2018 will be looking at a 2020. And the reason why there is that 13-month gap is that this area is so large that we wanted the parks to go to a formal budgeting process and review with our regular budget. And so, see, one thing like we honestly have 100% both every day or our percentage. This is a
Thank you. Can I ask you a similar question to what I asked you Stoppins? And I know, Mr. Hayne, in your opening remarks, you talked about the provision of fire service, particular ALS services, as being an operational issue, that there are several options that the city has. I guess my concern that I keep coming back to is, regardless of what the options are, what the operational issue is, does the city or Rodent City have the resources to ensure that the 8-minute ALS level service will beam back that this area is the Annex?
You guys should love to fire for special mass on she. If we don't have the resources, I will let you know we don't have the resources. If we do have the resources, I will let you know that. If we don't have them, I'll also let you know the gap that we're working. Because it's very important for a community to know. But one of the things I would ask you is, because I need to find this out, what's that level of service today, and where we interpret that's where we're trying to get to. That's where I will be trying to get to, because that's our citywide expectation. So I don't want to do anything different. But if we don't have it, I'll let you know we don't have them.
And I guess then my question would be to Mr. Haney as legal counsel, how does that jive with the standard or with the decision we need to make tonight, with regards to thermals? Yes.
Well, first of all, I think that, and I don't want to just say press up. I think what you have to understand is that Seattle has a world-class ALS system, and Seattle is not going to annex this area if it cannot provide that service and provide those resources. I think you have to look at it as there's once the board makes this decision, there is also the decision that the city council has to make, place this on ballot. There's also, once the election takes place, the city council's decision to actually effect annexation and approve it. And what I think the chief is telling you is, if we have the resources, if we can be sure that we can serve it at that point, city is going to go forward with the annexation. And the city wouldn't be presenting the annexation for you if it didn't think there was a way to provide these resources. And I think with the declaration of Chief Hagan, we've outlined some of the ways that the city can provide some of those resources and the things that the city can bring to bear. But the city is, I think Chief Scoggins would tell you that the city is not going to want to jeopardize its fire service to its existing residents. But by annexing someplace and severely diluting that and say, we can't make that response.
Thank you. That's very lucky for me to remind me is that that there are additional steps here in between now and presenting this to the residents of the annexation area for a vote. You will be doing your homework, and if you are Chief Hawkins uncomfortable that you would not be able to meet that standard, you're likely recommend to the state council not to proceed with that vote, or at least present that information to that relation for decision.
Absolutely. I think I need to make a comment on a realistic expectation on, what we're talking about here. That becomes our goal that we're going after. But today we have 7 medic units in the city, and then we have an Minnesota medic supervisor. So today, yeah, the city got really busy. All 7 of those medic units could be on call even today. And that happens from time to time on busy days. But we have depth with our medical services officer to actually go and assist also. This would come into that fold, possibly with an additional resource to help with that. So today, if your medic unit left this area, I'm not sure today where that next medic unit is coming from and how far it is away. But tomorrow, if this was a part of Seattle, and this medic unit went on call, like I said earlier, we would be moving our resources around, and medic bids are included in that, and make sure that we have citywide coverage. It's important to understand the context and in the big picture of the overall system is what we're talking about. Our system, the way we move our resources to provide the coverage. We also have 5 aid cars behind, and they're not medics, but they're EMTs at a different level, just like all of our other firefighters. Our aid calls are like the EMS calls all day long. And so that's another high level of care that we have higher the fire system.
The questions to the board.
Thank you. And thank you all again for your time, Jinta.
All right. So, not mistaken, we're at the end of the testimony portion of this public hearing. And the board has 3 options that we can consider as a point. I'd supposed to scuff them out unless they're need for a break.
I'll go. Where the 3 are? I'll go through the options there. The board can continue the hearing for more oral or written testimony, and a motion would state the date, time, and location of their presenting us. Or secondly, the board can close the hearing tonight to oral testimony, but leave written testimony open still to be considered. The motion, you'll need to state the deadline for submittal and the person to receive the written testimony. Or thirdly, the board can close the hearing tonight and begin to deliberate the review of the factors and objectives to reach a decision. We make a decision about the time frame for the deliberation. Go on option 3.
I would make a motion that close the hearing. You will close the hearing for written comments or the other way. I would make a motion to close the hearing for oral comments, close the hearing for written comments,
And to discuss just the case briefs. Is there a second? Second. What is such? Mr. Hammond, open for discussion. Question. Special.
So that means we would close her out. The public jurisdiction could give further input in writing. And we will meet a third night to dispense an errands and
You want to correct the
no, it was to close both the oral and written comments now and discuss
right
now.
Any other discussion regarding the motion, Ms. Evans?
I'd like to know from the executive secretary if we were to delay
But in reason is so we ran into any deadline problems.
Once the hearing Once the hearing is closed, you do not have to deliberate tonight, but you must come to a preliminary and then the board must come to a final decision within 40 days. That it's not movable.
Within 40 days of a decision tonight.
Even in 40 days of close-ins.
You lie of the lateness of the hour. I would probably vote against this motion to reach discussion decision tonight, but would agree with the motion for opposing the written and oral test.
And I believe just to clarify, the motion would leave the time frame for deliberation and decision still open for discussion by the board after the motion decision reached our closing testimony. Both balls.
Once it's closed, again, you must deliberate, come to a preliminary decision and a final decision within 40 days. So you can host tonight, you deliberate on Thursday, for example, when we have this room set aside. And then, but still within 40 days is tonight. You have to have a final decision.
And until what time do you have to will you see me? And Helga?
About 9:45, 9:45. So, yeah, to that about house. 20 minutes.
I suppose I would be in favor of at least having 20 minutes of deliberation, seeing if they can reach resolution tonight. I would be rugged and pay brownly. Is mushy.
So the motion before us is to close the hearing for oral and written testimony, and then to begin deliberating and reviewing factors and objectives for this issue. But we be good this motion closing the hearing for public testimony with written norm. So it's gonna move to second. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. Chair votes aye. So public testimony on the hearing phase of BRB decisions are closed. And that now moves us into deliberations by the board with the merits of the case. And well, we have Ms. Hirsch.
Unwriting take motions within deliberations, unless the board must have further discussion before motions vehicles. Honorable Judge, sure is it paging. Unless you hear from senior board members about some of my concerns, that's all right. Well,
So we'll have first discussion that individual members may want to express. The board says that no sanity is out there. Isabel, did you?
yes, I have several plots that I have to put out to the board from consideration. The annexation or sales tax is for me a primary value in my decision making. If this annexation does not go forward, he moves that much. And I was very happy to hear that the money GGs were in this annexation then it could not easiest punity to see carbons in quality city mix. I'm working. I have about 4 issues that people have told us the Balawak Hazel. I myself also questions on so basically should tell roof also the fire issue on
has been clarified for me in that it's just really hard right now, in my issue, to make any sort of state about what it would take to be on this service. How Annex is a form of bureaucrat. That the
By creating lottery citizens. Listen, unable, I would like to have some way, my decision, to be able to report that concern back to the city council and to anyone else who might read our decision. I feel the same about the library and the sewer and water rates. It didn't, although we asked a lot of questions and there were many things that were given to us, it still felt like there were some goals. And as a board, obligated to look at the factors, which included, well, does it cost an adequacy of bill services of balls, probable future use for such services, probable effect of proposal or higher than the cost and adequacy of services. I just don't feel comfortable and say, go ahead with this annex issue without suggesting that some of these needs to be feasible leaky. And I wanted to sue and I talk to or react to Mr. Walker's concern about not having been notified individually. This board does not generally do that. We don't generally send out bonded notifications. He said we have a list of factors and objectives that we have to meet with the allocates and all the rest of the agencies that would be working to say, have you dotted your I's and crossed your T's before you come to us? And then after we are happy with that, which I mean getting a answer, that I think there are ways to get those answers. Then the jurisdiction can usually take the annexation to the people. And the people vote. And there have been, times when we have said, yes, it looks like everything's in order. Take it to a vote. And the people said no. And the people hold the last word. So in terms of getting the rest of your community organized and discussing, number one, really press with the sense of community that's been talked about in this rate. And number two, I think you have the resources to go out and yet all these people who are not being represented here in on these discussions. And number three, I think the city of Seattle is on some birthright that this is saying that they would pay these public meetings. I believe. So that's all I have to say.
Was it retreat? Did you want a discussion on each of those issues that you had?
Any like it's open cable right now for board members to.
Well, I understand you about you dividing it up to, so there was like what three different issues. I can comment on the water and sewer. I do think that that's really a moot point because the assumptions are not on the table and they have to come back to this board, and the fees would be an issue at that time. So I don't think it's an issue right now.
Yeah, on that, I agree. You said that's not an issue. And from what I hear about the library, I mean, I really feel like even though there's a little bit of, maybe it's not finalized in in every way, it feels to me like there is discussions going on. Is it the testimony about the discussion that's going on between the city of Seattle and Giuliani? It feels to me like that's sort of at least close to being wrapped up. I mean, there's some openness that it felt like to me that is being addressed appropriately. I'm not going to talk about the fire yet. Somebody else take up on that.
I'll provide some comment on the fire. It is very cloudy. I cannot. Okay. I will provide some of my perspectives on the fire. I do believe that the response times for both fire and medical would be guided by the city of Seattle policy in that they are ranked as level 2 and a world class. They provide world class service. I know there's been plenty of testimony in identifying some potential gaps in fire service, and I acknowledge that that's uncomfortable at this point. But there is time for more discussion to occur about capital needs and operating agreements in providing for fire service. And if this annexation is to be successful, and I would also submit to everyone that there is a sense of urgency for this annexation. But if it's to be successful, City of Seattle will have to have answers to those questions as they begin public outreach and information sessions with the community. And then finally, my own perspective is that the benefits of a greatly enhanced police service, the sales tax subsidy for this area with the sunset is greatly outweighs the risk that you feel about the undefined operating areas at this point in buyers.
So I was going to
Really agree with Jay about the library issue in Maryland. I don't see that as a concern. Agreements are already in place. There are several more years before annexation could come into effect. I think they're on a real good progress.
Mr. Polis.
Yeah. First of all, thank you to all our community members. Hours getting late, and really appreciate you coming out 2 evenings in a row to hear us your views. It shows that you care about your community. That's important to us. I would like to say, I think that we really, for me, it boils down to like two issues, and that is the getting the details of the fire service ironed out, and then other than that, based on the testimony, concerns about the zoning. Now Seattle has said that they were looking at the most appropriate or not appropriate, closest equivalent to the county zoning. But we have heard testimony about concerns about the density in the single-family neighborhoods. So to me, it really just boils down to those two issues. I also agree with the other board members that I think a library agreement is, I don't want to say a non-issue, but it sounds like that's a pretty easily solved issue. So for me, it just boils down to basically get the details, ironing out the details of the fire and the zone. Mr. Hanlon?
Yeah, on the zoning, it was actually fairly clear, laid up. I think even in the notice of intention, from what I see, residential zoning, it's pretty close. I mean, we're talking unappropriated was an R4, which is 4 units, and the BRB that sits in Seattle, which is a 4.5 unit per acre, which is a civil, that's SF 9600. And they have a 6 unit per acre that matches to a 6 unit per acre. Is an 8 unit per acre that matches to an 8.6. The only sort of open issue is on the residential 12 unit per acre, the business an equivalent city of Seattle zone there, but on the 18 units per acre, they would match up to 26. There's a little bit of a decrease there, and 24 to 39 and 48 to 45. So, and then there's some other neighborhood and good business and office and industrial and match up pretty well. So what I looked at I was looking at what was presented. It looked actually pretty equivalent. There's only a few places that maybe to put along it. About the is Sibi a nice job of showing that equivalency. Retreat.
Yeah, I'll speak limited zoning. I thought as well that they match up pretty well. It's pretty typical for unit annexations to find an equivalent zone or that's existing. They always don't match exactly. I do think that the main issue with zoning in this public is the increase of density in the single family zones. And the single family zones are more equivalent than the multifamily zones. With multifamily, those units per acre. Often, that's the unit yield that is possible, and it's often with development that the developers can't meet those unit in reality. They can't meet those unit yields due to critical areas or other aspects of the site. So I really don't have a concern at all with the zoning. It looks very equivalent to me.
Any other points brought up in open format? So,
Way cool.
yeah, Ms. Hershey.
One thing that I haven't heard mentioned yet is the provision of social and community services that the city of Seattle could provide compared to the services that it currently could carry provided by Keene County. It was extremely helpful to have Ms. Breeman's handout regarding the levels of services. And I think it's clear that the city of Seattle could could service this area better than King County currently does. I also think it's clear that the city of Seattle will have its work cut out for it in terms of outreach, both in terms of this annexation, but letting the citizens of this area know what services are available for them and making sure that citizens can avail themselves of those services. But I think it was clear from the testimony both from King County and the city of Seattle that just annexation from that perspective that is to be very beneficial in this area.
All right, peers are ready. I move that staff be directed to prepare a resolution and a hearing decision approving the proposal for the city of Seattle North Highline area Y annexation, file number 2367, which we find consistent with the factors described in RCW 3693-170 and furthers the objectives of RCW 3693-180. With the second to the motion, I'll speak to my motion.
Mr. Wilson.
All right. This annexation is consistent with and furthers the objectives of the Boundary Review Board. First objective is the preservation of natural neighborhoods and communities. The annexation area is a natural extension of Seattle's southern boundary and includes the main unincorporated area between Seattle and Urian. Number two is use of physical boundaries. The annexation area follows existing city boundaries and highways and leaves no unincorporated islands. Number three is creation and preservation of logical service areas. The area in and of itself functions as a logical service area and with incorporation will be served by the city of Seattle. Police level of service will be dramatically improved with the higher service levels enabled by City of Seattle. They discuss the issues with fire, human services, utility districts. We tend to kind of often likely gloss over the street system because it's not a utility. But again, the city of Seattle is in a much better financial position to improve streets with the new community annexation areas, and in particular provide critical neighborhood traffic calming programs to enhance these neighborhood areas. Number four is the prevention of abnormally irregular boundaries. There are no irregular boundaries created by this annexation. 5. Discouragement on municipal corporations. The annexation is annexed to an existing city. 6 is dissolution of inactive special purpose districts, so not applicable. 7. Adjustment of impractice boundaries. There were no impractical boundaries to adjust. 8. Incorporation of cities or towns or annexations to cities or towns of unincorporated areas which are urban in character. This area is clearly urban in character. And 9, agricultural rural lands designated for agricultural resource use is not occurable.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor, and
So seconded. So the board would like to discuss the motion. Please, Bill, say, Mr. N.
I just wanted to say if the video, some of the comments that were made that maybe really can add to a letter or some additional concerns, and I don't know how we're gonna address that. It could be in when we submit our motion, or is there a way of being able to express some concerns to the city?
That eviction sheet and not conditions, no. Just some concerns, just a couple bulleted was the concern, spread of blood, the cover letter.
I would
So
suggest and say an opportunity to see that instead of conditions, because we don't want to conditionally approve the motion, but perhaps the recitals would be a good place to discuss some of the concerns. And also, I think that whatever this board's decision is, it must be based on the evidence that would be for it. So in the findings, I think it'd be appropriate to weigh both concerns and also the evidence that supports whatever decision this board makes tonight. So I think those concerns can be called out and then also addressed with countervailing evidence.
perfect. That's additionally.
That's what the hearing and resolution report does, actually. So that's standard.
And Mr. Chair, I guess I have more of a procedural question, I guess. So the motion in front of us now, to vote the affirmative one, is just to having the staff prepare motion or prepare the document, not approval. Right.
No, that you're correct. What will happen is that the week before a July meeting at which we make a final decision, you will get a copy of the draft report, and that comes up for decision after meeting, and then you may approve the record or adapt to do something different, or even may not.
we're there. You have a motion on the floor, and it's then seconded. Any further discussion? Or the board would like to date in. Okay. So all of the motion is to approve and have staff approve the North Highline Area Y annexation as proposed by the city of Seattle, and have staff prepare a resolution and carrying decision supporting that decision with the rationale that had been played out by was her sheet related to the factors and objectives that the BRB uses to guide the decision. So all those in favor of the motion, please say aye. All those opposed say no.
No.
Chair votes aye. Missing here. 8-1. That concludes our official purpose here for tonight. I want to thank our methods of public and the representatives of the government entities that come out or divided Pero. Very interesting testimony for us to consider and work on during these last 2 weeks. We appreciate your input. As always, it's been very interesting. IML
I will now close or adjourn the boundary boards.
King County, the June 14th